Hello and good morning, good evening, everyone, depending on wherever you are. I hope you are doing well. My name is Abhishek, and I'm the moderator for today's exciting event. I would firstly like to thank you for taking the time out to attend the Interactive Learning Power Hour session hosted by Harbinger. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I would like to inform you that Power Hour is a series of interactive roundtable discussions hosted by Harbinger, where industry stalwarts share their experiences and insights on a particular topic. The topic for today's discussion is Revive Aging e-learning content, and I'm sure that we will all have an engaging and enthralling time over the next 1 hour. With that, it's time for introduction. Our host for today's roundtable is Dr. Vikas Joshi. Dr. Vikas Joshi is a business leader who is passionate about product development and technology entrepreneurship. As the founder and CEO of Harbinger Group, Vikas drives Harbinger's vision with a relentless focus on innovation. His doctoral research at the University of Pennsylvania was on entrepreneurial learning. He is an alum of the esteemed Harvard Business School. We welcome you, Vikas, and before I hand over the stage to you, let's play a short introduction video for our audience. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Abhishek, and it's a pleasure to be here. We have a curious and unique topic, and we have an outstanding panel of experts, and we have a great audience. So this is going to be fun-filled 45 minutes that would be very useful to many of us who are involved in producing e-learning, instructional design, course design, and so on. To sort of set the context of this before we get into the game plan, industries often get ideas from other industries, okay? And sometimes completely unrelated industries. The whole notion of a lead user process is to learn from the needs of extreme or leading edge users in your industry, as well as users of analogous products in completely different industries. An example of that would be, you all know about 3M, right? Highly innovative company. And they were in the midst of figuring out prevention of infections associated with surgery. So basically bandage materials, right? And the breakthrough idea for what turned out to be a several hundred millions of business, and there's a Harvard case study on it, came from a completely unrelated industry. It was from the theatrical makeup specialists, because they have the knowledge about preventing facial skin infections, and some of that was baked into these products. So why not us? As e-learning producers, we are constantly running into this issue of, oh, we need to upgrade this course, or we need to update this. This is beginning to look a little too old. Are there other industries that have solved this problem? Sure enough, yes. And one extreme example is the obsolescence of code in tech firms. And that's how understanding the notion of tech debt or code debt is going to be our first stop in today's journey. And how do these tech people use various strategies to reduce tech debt? And then coming back to the content for e-learning, what's the nature of content aging? What are its indicators? And then what strategies might we use to avoid and manage content debt inspired by how the tech industry is handling tech debt? So that's our game plan for today. Sounds good? All right. So just a couple of quick backgrounders here. The lifespan of content seems to be all over the place, and for the most part, reducing. A blog is good for 2 years, and then as you start going all the way through Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, tweet, or something on TikTok, you're starting to see that the content lives, unless you have other methods, for a very short time. And one primary reason for that is the life is over. Now it doesn't have as much novelty or as much use. Now we are in a slightly different type of business. It's not about social media, it's about e-learning content. So it is supposed to be a little more durable, right? So here's a question. How much time would you give on this scale for a typical e-learning course? Whether it's a micro-learning course or whether it's a full-length course, what kind of a timeline would you put before everybody starts saying, oh, this course is due for an update? Here's a poll for you. Feel free to vote.
Thank you, Vikas. I'm just launching the poll for everyone.
Thank you.
And there starts the timer. Everyone, please feel free to cast in your votes, and we'll keep the poll open for 30 seconds.
Yep.
With
We got
that,
plenty of answers there.
we have a lot of answers, and we end the poll thereby, and also share the results.
Here we go. So we're looking at 2 years or thereabouts. I have a couple of different data points, okay? One is, this is a company that's serves the construction industry, and they have thousands of technical skill learning programs, and they give themselves 4.5 years for obsolescence, and their goal is to sort of have a revision in place within 3 years. So that gives you some idea. There's another very large library of courses, both technical as well as soft skills, and their customers constantly talk about the content being dated and perhaps usage drops as a result of that. So we're going to double click on this, and we're going to figure out what's going on and what are some other ideas that we could use. So we can stop sharing the poll now, and let's move on. In the e-learning content, there's a variety of factors that are behind aging. First of all, technology. Obviously, devices are new, form factors change. People want to see content vertically if they're using a phone, for example, and if they're fans of TikTok. That's just an example. There's many other technology-related issues. From a visual design perspective, people might be interested in using less of shading, more of flat colors, or other types of design elements that are more modern. In terms of standards, the learning tracking standards evolve, so meeting those standards as well as accessibility issues, which comes down to regulations. And learner expectations change. So learners might prefer shorter courses, or they might prefer, highly interactive learning materials. And then last but not least, the content itself may have to be updated because the product or the subject matter is changing. So this is the landscape of the content aging. How does this problem manifest for other product builders? For example, how do technology teams manage the obsolescence? And what lessons can we draw? So this now becomes a perfect time to introduce our panel today. We have Apratim, or AP, from Skillsoft. He's the Chief Product and Technology Officer. I'm going to introduce AP first as someone who's responsible for the overall strategy and product roadmaps for the entire Skillsoft portfolio. Skillsoft, as you know, is a leader in e-learning for well over a couple of decades, through a variety of organic as well as acquisitional growths. In addition, he's responsible for engineering, cloud operations and support for Skillsoft enterprise learning platforms. He's also responsible for digital and IT infrastructure across all areas within the Skillsoft group of companies. He has a PhD in computer science from Duke University, and he serves on several company boards. So, AP, welcome. It's a privilege to have you. What made you interested in this topic?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and pleasure to be speaking with you all. Actually, it's doubly interesting for me because number one, as a product and engineering professional, I face technology debt, which is question number one that we're going to talk about all the time. And anything that I can share, and also by way of sharing, learn, is interesting to me. Right, there's no end to learning, and also very recently, all of content production I'm now responsible for. Right, in Skillsoft, we produce thousands and thousands of hours of content every year. So I'm also responsible for all of content production, and from the poll, as you can see, somewhere between 2 and 3 years for the kind of content we produce. The shelf life is sometimes less than 12 months. And some our shelf life is less than 36 months, right? Nothing more than that, right? So understanding tech debt, how it relates to content debt, how tech can be used to reduce content debt, all of that is extremely interesting to me.
Interesting, yes. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about that, how to use tech to reduce content debt. We'll certainly talk about that. Thank you again, pleasure to have you. We also have Poonam Jaipuria. Poonam is the leader of Harbinger's e-learning business. She specializes in e-learning solutions and has helped several Harbinger customers realize their vision of taking learning online and improving their workforce productivity, engagement, as well as skill levels. She specializes in e-learning solutions and education technology, and she's a frequent speaker at prominent L&D conferences in the US. So Poonam is joining us from Kuala Lumpur today. Welcome to the show, Poonam.
Thank you, Vikas, for the introduction, and excited to be a part of this panelist today, and a pleasure talking to all of you. And Vikas, it's an interesting question because this is one thing which keeps me awake many times, and while I design solutions for our customers. And what I realized is creating a course and launching it in market is a very satisfying journey for our customers. But interestingly, the job doesn't end there. And in fact, it starts after that at times, because as you rightly said, the information gets dated pretty quickly. And then it's just not the content, but even at times the design, because we all know that every few years the design changes. And as a learner, we all have experienced content in different forms. And if the design, the look and feel is not good, you almost feel that the content also may not be good. So from a content producer perspective, you need to think about content aging, not just in terms of content, but also design. So how do you design solutions to keep these courses updated, from all aspects, is something which keeps my customers worried at times, and it's my job to kind of find solutions for those. So that's what keeps me interested in this topic.
Perfect. So let's get right after it. I think we're going to start with AP, and I'll stop sharing the screen in just a second. But AP, really, we need to double click on tech debt and first sort of educate ourselves on what is technical debt and how does this idea of technical debt shape the thinking of engineers who are responsible for managing complex products and large code trees. So over to you, AP.
Yeah, thank you, Vikas. This is a complicated topic. Let me see if I can kind of net it out in a few simple terms. First of all, why does this happen in a particular? Suppose you're doing a homework for a professor, and you have the weekend, right? And you want to do a perfect solution, which runs very fast, and you are able to finish it over the weekend. So now take the homework, and you're building a product now. There are all sorts of other pressures. Time to market. Sales has sold a promise, and you quite don't have it yet. but there's a customer promise. So tech debt fundamentally happens, there's a fundamental conflict between time to market and a solid technical foundation. Sometimes you're lucky and you have the time and you actually first time ship a very solid technical foundation. But many times squads or engineers have to take a few shortcuts. So there are many examples of tech debts, right? So sometimes tech debt happens because your code stack is just old. Let's say now if you're using older language and the whole industry is adopting a newer language for other reasons, right? More cloud friendly, for example. So that's like a long-term tech debt that you have. Mm-hmm. Tech debt happens because you ship something that is functionally fine, but you know that it gets adopted after a while, and if the monthly active user hits 1 million, you're going to topple over, right? You know that, but now you're at that point that you don't have an MAU of 1 million, so you want to wait, and then you never get back to it. So there is performance-related tech debt. There's simple time and age-related tech debt. There's security-related tech debt, that you are not properly statically testing your code for security holes, and then someday it'll come back and bite you, right? There's tech debt related to accessibility, right, of your solution. So I'm just giving you a few examples where you can go to market, you can serve a class of users, but then you are basically taking on risk of some sort, and that is called tech debt. I hope that explains why it happens, and there's some different concrete examples.
Absolutely. Yes, it does. But just a quick question here. So is it something that sneaks up on you, or is it something that you know you are accumulating? In other words, you have a deliberate plan.
Yeah,
you know
so
what you're walking into.
It's both. Sometimes engineers know knowingly that they're accumulating. I'll give you an example. Recently, for the last 3 years, we had pressure to time to market for a particular system we shipped in the market called Percipio, right? Initially, time to market was so important that we knew that the system was not completely accessible, right? But we made a plan. We made a plan of kind of clearing the tech debt in a particular way, right? So it was known. There was a plan that we came back and cleaned things up, right? So that's a good kind of thing where you actually plan to clean it up, knowing it, right? But then there's sometimes it sneaks up on you, because suppose you have this concept that you are writing code that will be deployed in a managed data center. Versus you do have a concept that I'm going to go to the cloud, I'm going to run my code on AWS or some other system like Azure. The fundamental core principles would be different, and you don't have time to deal with that when you have to ship code. So sometimes it sneaks up on you because you don't think about it, and suddenly somebody says, oh, let's migrate to the cloud, and it becomes a big problem because you kind of go and change some fundamentals, right? So there are both examples, and what really sneaks up on you is, suppose you start a company in, I'm just going to pick a language which is not so recent, called Ruby, right? It was very hot in 2009 or something, and you wrote mountains of code in Ruby, right? And now the new languages are being adopted, and they're more fit for new deployment patterns in cloud. For example, programmers are more plentiful in those new languages.
Sure.
So you have that sneaks up on you over years.
Absolutely. And as you're speaking, I think examples within the learning content domain are flashing in my head. The most vivid one being Flash. That kind of went away, and then right at the turn of the decade, I guess, and then we needed to move to HTML. Or for example, an image in which you embed a label, not realizing that this would have to be translated into Spanish next year. And so the image becomes useless because the label is embedded in the image. So there's almost analogous examples between code and content over here. Maybe I can also ask you a little bit about, is all debt bad, or like you get home mortgage? I mean, that's good, right? It lets you do more. So philosophically, how do you look at debt?
Debt is something that is not bad per se. Debt is a way to manage a balance between forward progress and accumulating certain liabilities. So any company, take a company, right? We're talking about tech debt. Any company is oftentimes funded with a mixture of equity and debt, right?
Sure.
From a financial world. So all debt is not bad. Sometimes you need debt. It's a balance, right?
Yes.
So sometimes if you want to completely build the best possible code base, you will miss time to market and your code base is irrelevant, right? If somebody has beaten you to market, right? And gotten a whole bunch of users. So tech debt by the very definition is inevitable. It's not fundamentally bad as long as you are aware of it and you don't let it sneak up too much and you don't let it stack up too much. So that comes the exciting. So for a startup or a small endeavor, it's always exciting to ship new code, ship new features, get more customers. It's very exciting. The sales is selling and you're like out of high, right?
Sure.
But then if you don't pay attention to processes and principles and quality, security, accessibility, all of this stuff, eventually you come to a screeching halt because then you have acquired a customer base, the customer base complaints start coming, and then you're in escalation hell and your feature velocity just drops, right? Having a large base of customers can actually slow you down, right? And that's what happens. So as long as you manage this properly, you have an allocation of capacity that is systematically clearing out tech debt. So managing your workforce properly is very important in terms of forward-looking development, in terms of clearing out tech debt, in terms of, in fact, building quality code, right?
Absolutely, and that's the theme I want to come back to in just a few minutes. But just a quick question for Poonam here. Do you see that there are indicators of content obsolescence? This is getting aged. What are some of the early signs that you see in e-learning projects?
Yeah, so in fact, quite a bit similar to what AP was just sharing, because I could almost feel that you're talking for content debt as well, AP. So, I mean, I know accessibility is being talked a lot today, and everyone is trying to figure out how do I take my huge library of content and make it accessible overnight, which is that's a tech debt or content debt, I would say, if someone has to handle. Other thing is, people, when they are not following the right development practices, for example, I'm creating, just as an example, whether it's any authoring tool, nowadays they have templates or master templates to follow so that you can change it at one place, but people end up as a developer, a quick fix is to just create copies of screens and create the courses. Now suddenly one change I have to do at 40-page screens on my course instead of one common template. So that's another thing. Or even technologies like Storyline who have triggers, and like AP said, sometimes you do a quick fix by writing a hard-coded variable or a value there, but eventually it breaks at that value and you have not even probably tested about it. So those things which you unknowingly or knowingly add to courses, I can almost see these add up to the debt eventually.
Yeah, and to your last point, I would argue, and maybe AP can correct me, but mistakes in code are different from technical debt. I mean, a mess is a mess, and it's not a debt. It's a theft or something. It's not a debt, right?
Yeah.
But coming back to you, AP, what would be your sort of leading signs? Is it like support's getting a lot of calls, or you can pretty much tell from how much time the sprints are taking, or how do you assess the debt levels?
Well, first of all, tech debt is not a mistake. Tech debt is something that you know that you're accumulating, and you know that how much is kind of stacking up, and how much are you taking care of it every sprint, right? Then how quickly you're responding to it, is your velocity of fixes enough, or you need to speed it up, comes from the field very quickly, right? Accessibility tech debt, if you have completely inaccessible code and you go and try to sell to large multinational customers, after selling to not large multinational customers or the federal customer base in the United States, for example,
Right.
Well, it catches up very fast. It becomes an urgent situation, right? Similarly, any type of performance tech debt that you had taken, you knew that you're going to do that, right? But you never came around to doing it. The system topples down, every Monday morning, and you have a problem, right? So the urgency of the debt suddenly becomes urgent sometimes. And security is one of those, actually. Security is one of those which it kind of really sneaks up on you quickly. On the night time, you're very fine, and you wake up in the morning and you hear a hack and you feel completely exposed. If you're lucky, you're not attacked. That's one that sneaks up on you.
Absolutely. Yes. So you have both, things that you can monitor and things that can surprise you, essentially,
Essentially, yes.
So that's what that is. So I guess we can move on to the next issue, which is how to preempt and minimize on one hand, and then how to fix once you have it there. So what's the interplay between tech debt and agile methodology and sprints? And how do you, like in every sprint, do you make some room for debt fixing, or how do these things happen?
Yeah, we plan it well, right? So we plan it. So there's always a tussle between product management and engineering, right? Engineering wants to sleep at night, doesn't want to go escalation calls, so they want to build good code, right? In general. And product wants features tomorrow, right? Like 20 features tomorrow, right? So there's this tussle, which is very good, which is creative tension, right? The engineering managers and product managers need to come to a conclusion that I'm building a product not for tomorrow. I'm also building a product that needs to sustain itself in the market. When people realize that, then they come to a natural point of allocating resources every sprint between either customer defects or known tech debt and forward-looking development. Sometimes it also varies, right? The allocations vary, and overall, people get to a point where on a 1-year time scale, you end up spending 30, 35, even 40% of your development capacity sometimes for a large enough code base in customer defects, tech debt, and that kind of stuff, and you 60% in forward-looking features. In fact, for a scaled system like the one I have, right? If you're spending 60% in forward-looking features, you're doing really well, actually.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
Because once you have 10, 15, 20, 30 million users, you are going to be tested.
Yes.
Right.
That's fascinating. And how does this play out when it comes to large content catalogs, Poonam? Do you what kind of a mix do you see? Do you see a lot of modernization requests relative to new development? For example, a 1,000 course catalog might be modernized 250 courses a year vis-a-vis 20 new courses. What's the proportion? How does that play out?
Right. So because I think from a content provider perspective, it's exactly the same tussle. Like, at one hand, they need to create new courses because that's their go-to-market strategy to acquire new customers. So it's not about making a choice if I should do one over the other. The choice is about how do I make both in the right combination, because the salespeople need new courses. At the same time, there are salespeople who also need better features in the course so that they can upsell or renew the subscription library as well. So how do you manage this is what's the thing. So I have seen customers do very interesting ways to handle this. One of our customer, which is San Diego based, and they have a health content library for continuing ed. So what they have done is their internal team of development, they completely focus on new course development because they are closer to the SMEs and doctors, and it's easier for them to create new content. But to maintain the courses and make sure, there's no debt accumulating, they have a Harbinger team here, which only focuses on maintaining the courses. And that's how the right balance between new and the old courses is managed. So that's an interesting way to do it.
Absolutely. So coming to fixing the debt, AP, I think I want to take you back to that automation idea. So how do you use automation to reduce all kinds of, first of all, surface the debt and then potentially reduce the debt using automation?
Very good question, right? And this cannot be answered in the abstract, right? This has to be answered very specifically. I'll answer it in two ways. I'll give two examples where you can use automation to surface the data, at least surface the data, and you can then use automation somewhat to reduce the data, right? So there are tools that can scan your code for security issues, static scan or penetration testing. There's a lot of automated penetration testing, automated static security testing that can very quickly surface the data, very quickly surface the data, right? And then you either build a plan to fix it, right? Or if the that has to do with underlying versions of old software that you're using in your stack, right? Some of the patching could be automated, right? So use a combination of automation to fix the debt or actually manual addressing some vulnerabilities and bugs, right? So security is one domain. Accessibility, very similar. There are many accessibility tools that can discover that type of issues, right? Very similar situation. One that's difficult is suppose you have large body of a monolithic code in an old language, right? And you want to convert that code into a microservices architecture into a new language.
Yes.
And the logic is all entangled, right? That is where automation is still not there to really either detect or help. So that's where, real architecture horsepower is needed to understand refactor. So the two major approaches that you use, refactor, right? And logically break up services and then build a migration plan. As you build a new service, use the new service and then call into the old one through a layer, right? So progressive refactoring is a technique that is often used to do this.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So turning to you, Poonam, then first of all, are there tools for checking and surfacing accessibility issues in an e-learning page?
Definitely, Vikas. There's today of course, there are some free tools out there. At the same time, at Harbinger, for example, we have built a plugin which can actually scan a web page or a course page for that matter. Basically, it has to be an HTML page, and using the right tags and programming logic, it can actually surface every small bit of the page saying, here are 20 accessibility issues. These are serious ones. These are warnings. So you can literally get a very good detailed report. And not only that, it can even tell you which sections of the accessibility standards it complies to and which are the ones which are not compliant today.
Excellent. And so coming to the other example that AP gave, let's just say an analogous case where you have a large, mature content library, and now the vendor realizes that they need to translate it in multiple languages, deploy it in multiple devices, and do all kinds of things. And therefore, it is necessary to use a learning content management system and almost take this content and sort of split it back and fit it into a LCMS and then essentially propagate various versions of it, right? In terms of languages or devices or whatever. So how far is automation in this, or is this still hard work?
Not actually. I mean, of course, there's automation. One thing which I've generally seen people think when it comes to automation is 100% automation. I think one suggestion I usually give to my customers in my discussions is automation can be even helping you solve 70 or 80% of your problem. Well, the rest of it could still be manual. And there are ways you could, so the architecture of the learning content management system, like you said, of creating the right templates, putting the right tags along, all of that can be the first time design, which should be done right. But once that's done, then how do I use automation to put content into that format is something which I can completely automate. So that's how you manage between, right design followed with automation.
So to just make it a little more concrete, I'll share a slide and maybe you can talk through this. But, some of the strategies for handling content debt, would you mind sort of walking us through that, Poonam?
Definitely, Vikas. Sure. Again, some of this is coming through various discussions we had with our customers over the last few years. And the first thing which I have seen which really works is attack the place where the maximum impact is, which is where the data helps you find it out. So basically find out which are the courses which are most frequently updated or which are the most used by your customers. And to those courses, do it right the first time is what matters, because right there you may have solved a big part of your content debt problem. So that's one suggestion, a way to handle it. The dedicated team model, I think I just gave an example a few minutes back, is have the right focus of your workforce on new development and at the same time focused on updates. The third one is more from a development standpoint, which we have seen doing it right the first time, is set certain development standards for your team. And one of the standard which we make sure we follow for our large content library providers is designing the right master templates. And when you develop those, rather than creating a screen by screen, use it through the master template information. So that way, any change you need to do, you just do it at the master template level and simply republish your course and it's out there. So it really helps a lot in reducing your content debt very quickly. So those three are on that side. Now, the fourth thing which we try doing a lot for our customers is using automation to fix things at scale. And just to give you an example on that, for piece like, suppose there is a lot of courses which you have, which are in, say, JSON or XML format, but now the technology is updated to, say, Xylem or LCMS, like you said. How could I just take my old content and use automation to present the same data into the new format? And that's where the automation can really help you quickly migrate a volume of content. So that's one interesting way to manage and also reduce manual errors along the way. The fifth one is actually more from a long-term perspective, and something really very strategic someone should think through is setting up the right systems. And one of the common example we use is learning content management systems or the Xylem. Just to give you an example, one of our customer based out of the US, what they did was they had a lot of ILT content, so classroom training content in like hundreds of PPTs, and some part of their content was also similar. So they used to use that across multiple courses. So the way we designed the Xylem for them was having like the nugget-based development. And not just that, we then migrated all their courses into the Xylem using that system. The benefit of it is now when they need to make any change, it's done at one place and it's reflected across all the courses. For example, if there's a logo change, I simply update a logo file and all my courses start using the new logo. And not just that, even publishing the courses happens literally the next moment. So it doesn't take time to publish the courses and take it back to the LMS. So, but designing such a system really is an important step, and doing it right is also equally important. And of course, the last one I would like to talk about is the technology. And there can be very creative and at the same time the right ways of using tech. For example, one of our customer was having a lot of content but stuck in Storyline. They wanted to have their courses available in multiple languages. Now, what we designed was, rather than just creating multiple Storyline files with the translated content, because then it would have meant maintaining those many Storyline files, what we did was we switched them to a custom HTML5 solution, and the content was moved into JSON files. Now, the benefit of this was now that only the JSON files had to be translated on the back end, and the same HTML course could now play different languages on the click of a button. So using the technology and the right architecture can really help you reduce such tech debts. So yeah, those were a few ideas, Vikas.
Those are wonderful. I think very, very hard-earned and practical insights. I think AP lives in both worlds, the technology and content. So maybe if you want to add anything here on the content side of the tech, of the debt issue, feel free to, AP.
No, I think, one thing I have realized is, which is a pattern that applies to both tech and content, is thinking about content in terms of modular design patterns. So I think modular design patterns as we create content is an architectural pattern that translates across tech and content that is easier to maintain and easier to fix, right? You can certainly take certain modules out. Take a technology course. A technology course is sometimes which has a short lifestyle or short lifespan. But in any technology, there are some basics that don't change, and there are versions change from some particular things change, right? So if you are able to modularize your course in a manner where you can actually there's a basic introduction module that generally does not change or has a larger lifespan, but there are particular specifics that change quicker, right? As you go into it.
Yes.
It becomes easier to change out modules, right? So I think generally at a highest level, modular architecture is important as you both think about creating new content and technology.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think content architecture would be an increasingly important competency to implement some of these things. Just knowing how to layer the content, knowing what will change and what will remain constant, for example. So I still have one question saved for you, AP, but I'm going to first summarize everything we learned so far, which is that you have to keep your courses from going stale. And there are various indicators or data points that tell you that the time is coming. A good heuristic is 3 years. For tech courses, it could be shorter, like AP suggested. You need to have a plan to maintain courses. And that plan would have something almost analogous to the code maintenance plan, where you systematically reduce or control debt. Not all debt is bad, but it needs to be in control. And finally, there are strategies that Poonam outlined, like, for example, design updates using templates, content updates, instructional updates, using technology for separating content from presentation. All those can be used to keep the courses fresh at a fraction of the cost. So now I have my question for AP. Do you also see this as a leader? Do you see this as a change management issue? In other words, motivating teams to address debt and strike the right balance between getting out in a hurry versus doing the right thing? Do you find that that's a conversation between engineering leaders and engineers? That's constantly
engineering leaders, product leaders, and engineers. I find that a continuous conversation between engineering leaders, product leaders, engineers, and architects, right? And I think a good leader will help to find the right balance, essentially, right? It's all about balance.
Perfect. So on that note, I'm going to hand this back to Abhishek to tell us a little bit about Harbinger. And this, you got 60 seconds to say it. And then we'll go on to Q&A.
Thank you very much, Vikas. I would like to share with our viewers that being in the e-learning business for more than 3 decades now has actually allowed us to witness the evolution of e-learning right from the early 90s, when corporates were aiming to use computers to train people and reduce training spend, to fast forward today, where technology is playing a key role in learning and development. And throughout this journey, Harbinger has strived to lead with innovation in the e-learning space, and that's been our key differentiator. When I mention innovation, it could be either incorporating new technologies in the e-learning space like artificial intelligence, AR, VR, automation frameworks, or it could be adopting newer concepts like experiential learning, competency-based learning, etc. So when you work with Harbinger, you will experience our focus on delivering unique learning experiences, and that too by significantly optimizing your training spend and also reducing the development time. As a group company, we are a team of 800 professionals, which includes a team of 150 plus e-learning producers. So we are small enough to care, but large enough to deliver. With respect to what we offer, we provide our clients with end-to-end custom content development, modernization, and learning technology services and solutions. Also, not to forget, as you see in the screen, we have been recipients of many prestigious awards and recognitions, including the Silver Award winner at the recent CLO 2022 and few more. Thank you.
So we have some time for any questions, and so we'll take those and then conclude the power hour. I'll stop the sharing now.
I think there was a particular question of interest, AP, although you have responded, but just in the interest of the overall audience, can I request you to share your views? I think Mr. Mayank Mudgal, thanks for your query. So I think, and his question was looking at the future AI-based tools, creating dynamic age-proof learning solutions. What opportunities and challenges do you see in that?
Yeah, so there's some examples given like ChatGPT, DALI also, right? So I think these technologies are new. They have to be proven out, first of all, and they are very specific also. So AI could be used to understand engagement level in different parts of your content, right? So for example, a camera properly fitted could understand, a user engaging or not, right? And then post-processing and then continuous improvement. Talking about ChatGPT and which just came out like a few days ago, I don't quite know how that can modernize a video course automatically, right? But AI is a very powerful tool, can be used in many, many ways to understand efficacy of content and so on.
Thanks, AP. Another related question on tech debt. So when some major change happens, for example, implementing accessibility, which was never in the roadmap, do you call it tech debt? And if yes, do you plan for such changes?
Accessibility is definitely tech debt. And in my area, we plan for accessibility changes. When we know it often happens with acquisitions. When you acquire a smaller company, let's say, and not necessarily paying attention to a certain set of customers that your Skillsoft would normally pay attention to, right? So often with acquisitions, we inherit a lot of accessibility and some other tech debt, including security, and we do plan to fix that.
Thanks, AP. Poonam, a question for you, considering it's more around LCMS. Can you share a little more about LCMS solution you talked about? How does that help in reducing the content debt?
Sure, Abhishek, thank you. And thanks for the question. So again, it's all about content architecture, like Vikas and AP also alluded to. So it's what LCMS basically does is it allows you to present content as data and presentation separately. Okay. And whereas, for example, in the same screen, you will have both the things, the design and content together. So it becomes difficult to make changes. But in LCMS, you actually keep them as two different things so that tomorrow when you want to change the design, you just focus on it. Or when you want to change the content, you just change that. And then the system takes care of putting this together to create a course out of it. Okay. So that's the content architecture. Now, the benefit of this is, like I said, it actually helps you very quickly manage the debt, because say tomorrow your design changes and now you want to, instead of a 3D design, you want a flat button, or instead of certain color shades, you want a different flat colors. Now you can change it just at one place, and because of that, and simply when you publish the courses, all your courses now have the same design. And that's the benefit, or faster way to reduce the content debt.
Thank you so much, Poonam. I think in case of no further questions, can I also request the audience to share all your questions at info@harbinger.com, and we'll make an attempt to respond to all of them. Again, just checking for any questions.
Yeah, there's some in chat.
Yeah, I don't see anything particularly unique in chat. There was a couple in Q&A. Let me go back. Look in the Q&A. For a second. Somehow the tool doesn't seem to open up. Can you monitor the Q&A, Abhishek? I think there are two unanswered questions.
I think we got another question. Yeah. So yeah, I think thanks Nia for posting your query. So Nia is saying, I wanted to understand the scope of non-tool based e-learning courses like ILTs and CBTs, not RISE or Articulate in the coming future.
So I think that's probably for Poonam.
Poonam, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just reading through that question, Abhishek. So, yeah. So the question is the scope of non-tool based e-learning courses. So yeah, okay. So one thing about it is, I think ILTs and CBTs are not e-learning, right? I mean, again, I don't mean RISE and Articulate is, but there are many more tools for that. But generally, ILTs are more PowerPoint driven, and then they are used to basically, do classroom or online synchronous trainings. Now, the question can be, how do you kind of plan for the debt for those courses? Is the assuming that's the question. Now, again, the same thing, right? Following the similar development standards. For example, let's just take a PowerPoint. Now, every PowerPoint has something called master templates. Now, are you creating a design per screen, or are you using master templates in PowerPoint? Also, there are very good technical solutions around PowerPoint, like you could use .NET technology to automate certain things within a PowerPoint. Now, can you use some of that if you have hundreds of PowerPoints to make some common changes? So those are the kind of solutions we should look for in managing debt for ILTs and CBTs.
Thank you, Poonam. AP, another query for you, which has come. What is the most common reason for tech debt, security, or tech change?
Hard to say. The most pressing reason is security. Common, I don't know how to answer that. The pressing reason is security because it can just come and get you one fine morning and you don't know what hit you, right? So you better not have security debt linger for too long, right? Tech change builds up over time, and then it's like really the system becomes unmalleable and you cannot innovate, right? Very different things. Both are common. One is more urgent, another is more debilitating in the longer term.
Sure. Thanks, AP. And one more query for you. How often has security been a cause for tech debt?
Oh my God, all the time.
All the time.
All the time in any scalable operation. There are good tools these days. It used to be much worse. There are good tools these days where most agile teams today are, let's say, deploying code to the cloud, right? They're using CI/CD pipelines, right? In the CI/CD pipelines, almost often modern good practices will have you a security static code checker, right? And it would give you thousands of suggestions. Sometimes they are superfluous, so sorting through that is important. So it is reducing because of these tools, right? But then again, they don't catch everything, right? They don't catch everything. You still find security bugs using penetration tests. So therefore, it's a very good practice to sponsor penetration tests of your own in a controlled way and address the vulnerabilities immediately. In fact, it's not an option anymore, because if you're a public company and the cybersecurity is a hot topic in every board, right? So I, for example, have a chief information security officer whose job is to go and find this stuff in our code base. So
thanks, AP. Thanks, AP. And with that, I would also want to thank you all our panelists for today, for taking out time and giving your time out for such an intriguing topic and making all of our times worth. For any unanswered questions, audience, I request you to keep them coming, more the merrier, and we'll definitely get back to you one-on-one. So here is the link where you can please share your questions. and you can expect a very prompt response from our side, and including meetings as and when necessary. Again, thank you so much. I wish all of you a very good day and a good evening ahead.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Abhishek,
Bye.
for anchoring this, and thank you, AP and Poonam, for being such wonderful panelists. Learned a lot.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.